longer the same after having heard certain sounds. And this is the more the case when we hear organized sounds, organized by another human being. Music. At about 1950, it was no longer self-understood that a sound is a sound. Because the idea to compose the sounds themselves came up as a result, we might say, of the historical development, the school of Vienna, of the Viennese composers, had reduced the musical objects, themes, the motors, to entities of only two sound intervals. Webern in particular, Anton von Webern. And when I started to compose music, I certainly was a child of the spirit of the first half of the century. Continuing and widening what the composers of the first half had prepared. And it took a little step to have the idea to compose a single sound, to synthesize the sound. I should immediately say that it was a second thought because I started analyzing all sorts of sounds. I recorded sounds in the Musée de l'Homme in Paris, where you can find all the exotic instruments. Instruments of wood, of stone, of lithophones, of metal, of all different cultures, and of all the different historical periods. But I also analyzed sounds which I recorded in the daily life. All sorts of noises. I began to study books in which you can find the analysis of vowels of the classical musical instruments. And one by one, not having had any good training at the music conservatory or at the university in acoustics, one by one, I became aware that the sound is not just a sound. And I became very interested in the differences between the sounds. What is the difference between a piano sound and a vowel ah and the sound of the wind? And after having analyzed a lot of sounds, this second thought came up. It was always implied, if I can analyze sound, which exists already, which I can record, why can I not try to synthesize sound in order to find new sounds, if possible? And at that time, we had only instruments which try to imitate classical instruments. You find them in bars. Not yet in the symphony orchestras, because the symphony orchestra up to now is a fairly closed sound world because of its social composition. So, for example, no electric organs of the modern type of organs can be found in symphony orchestras easily. But, for example, in pop groups nowadays, you will find a lot of equipment that has been produced by companies who have started building instruments with keyboards and certain registers like organ stops. something that is more basic, more simple than the sounds you can find in the daily life. And I started investigating in acoustic laboratories what might be available as the most simple sound waves, for example, sine wave generators, which were used for measurement. And I started very primitively to synthesize individual sounds by superimposing sine waves in harmonic spectrums in order to make R, O, U, O, etc., all the vowels. And then I found one by one generators which produce what we call the white noise comparable to the white color, and which you can filter with electric filter in order to produce colored noise, like etc. And when I make just then it comes very close to certain water noises. There you are. It started very primitively to synthesize the sound. What is important is that I tried more and more, like many others did in French studios. That's where I began to study these things 23 years. In the group so-called music concrete, they recorded sounds and transformed them with electric devices. For example, speed up sounds. Everybody who has got a record player knows how to speed up or speed down music just by changing the speed. Well, this is very important that we can, since the late 40s of this century, change the speed of a tape recorder continuously, not just discontinuously, and transform sound by speeding up sound. Let's immediately jump to the extreme. Then we come to the first criterion. If you take a Beethoven symphony and speed it up, and if you are able to speed it up in such a way that you do not at the same time transpose the pitch, the register of the Beethoven symphony. Let's say we would have an electric device that it sounds still with the same register, in the same register, but we would compress it in time. We would compress it to such an extent that it would last just 1 second. Then we get a sound which has a particular color, as we say, particular timbre, a particular shape, dynamic shape, and its inner life, which is so highly compressed in time, is what Beethoven has composed. And it is a characteristic sound compared to, let's say, the compression of a piece of kakaku music from Japan.